What's going on, everybody? Happy semifinal Sunday as we wrap up the first weekend of semifinals competition here on Talking Elite Fitness. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Sean Woodland with Tommy Marquez. Lauren Khalil is, roaming the streets of France right now, of Paris?
I don't know if that's a good thing or a great thing or if it's a bad thing.
She deserves a break. She's been hustling hard over there in France, getting us all
Totally.
kinds of great interviews on social media. If you missed any of that, go over to our Instagram page. You got plenty of athlete interviews. Laura Horvath, we got Lazar, we got Yona. I mean, it's all there. But we wanted to hop on here and recap what was a really exciting final day of competition. I mean, if this is what these next 2 weekends are going to be like, it's going to be a ton of fun because those final events on Sunday, having the individuals having it all to themselves, 3 events, I think that really delivered.
And I think if you look at how the events played out, ultimately, the nature of with the exception of a few athletes who are just so good it doesn't matter.
Right.
With that exception, it seemed like almost all of the athletes in that like 5 to 10, 5 to 15 slot had these seesaw kind of days because the nature of the skill or interference that we talked about, the shoulders, or even just how those fast finales work where you can't make a mistake and execution at a high intensity. It was like trying to keep up with the leaderboard was chaos for a little while. Like the
Yeah.
men, especially the women, kind of settled itself a little bit by the end, but there was a ton of excitement, and we saw some massive swings and some pretty cool CrossFit dreams get made by some of the athletes that actually put their hat in the ring in a big way.
Before we really dive into this, we want to thank our sponsor for our semifinals coverage this weekend, and that is Northern Spirit. You can head to northernspirit-sport.com to shop their latest CrossFit branded collection. They have all kinds of good stuff on the website. They were kind enough to send me a t-shirt, super comfortable, really durable as well, stuff that you can wear inside and outside of the gym. And they have really stepped up in a big way to support semifinals. So we want to support them. If you guys have a chance, go to the website. You can scan the QR code that's on your screen right now. Or again, it's northernspirit-sport.com, and they are the uniform providers. Some of the athletes wore them. They look good. All
They
the
do.
volunteer and judges shirts look really good too. So
Yeah.
if you want to get some stuff that I think they have like semifinal branding on them a little bit,
Mhm.
all kinds of good stuff. Lauren has been wearing it on the show the past couple of days. northernspirit-sport.com. Hey, let's support the people that have been supporting the sport, and they again have stepped up in a really big way. All right, where do you want? Let's start in Europe because that's the one that everybody was talking about. We'll get to Asia at the end because there were some really exciting races in that semifinal as well, with some game spots changing hands in that final event. But we'll start on the men's side because that, and I said this in the highlight, that was chaos going into the final event. I mean, it was, I want to give Chase Ingram a shout out here because to have to keep track of all those scenarios and who was where and who needed what is really hard when you get into that, those final heats, especially when you have athletes who, like Victor Hoffer was in heat 3 and was in 9th place, and then you had everybody else going in heat 4. Chase did a great job of keeping that straight, and I thought he was fantastic. Had a pleasure listening to him. It was a pleasure listening to him and Lucy, pardon me, call that event. Lauren on the floor, Lauren Smith was fantastic as well. But here's the final leaderboard: top 10 men going, and it is Lazar Jukic who wins the whole thing. Lazar with 516 points. Yella Hosta, how about him?
Mm.
Finished second. Heinrich Happelainen, Aniola Kai, Luka Jukic, the Jukic brothers going back to the games together, and Victor Hoffer winds up in 6th place. Let's stop right there. Like, what a climb that guy made on the final day.
Yeah, it was obviously like one half of the equation is making sure you take care of your own business, right? You go out and
Mhm.
you perform to the best of your abilities. You execute your strategy. You put things down. I think adding to that is what the pressure you can apply when you hit it when you're one of the guys chasing
Mhm.
and you go out from an earlier heat and you win, like he did with the handstand walk event. Applying pressure to the other athletes they may say like, look, you may talk to athletes and they'll say, hey, like I just run my race. I don't focus on anything else.
Mhm.
I guarantee you, especially for some of the younger athletes and the less experienced athletes, seeing Victor go out there knowing that he's one of the guys chasing you on the bubble, hitting the home run, absolutely makes a difference. It
Mhm. Yeah.
100% makes applies pressure for the people that are not used to being there. And as a result, not just that, but him being one of the few athletes that was able to keep everything inside the top 10 on Sunday, the end result is he moves up 10 spots.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't just qualify now, like he qualified pretty solidly ahead of 11th place. He had a 30-point cushion when all like everything shook out. But if you even you go up further up the leaderboard, right? Like I think I want to say 6 of the top 10, no, maybe or 7 of the top 10, and then the people on the bubble as well. Uldis, Luca, Yona, Colin, once you got to Fabian Benito, he was realistically kind of out of it. But every single one of those athletes had a 15th or lower place finish, oftentimes multiple finishes on the final day, meaning that any one event you could make up if you hit a home run 40-ish points on those athletes.
Mhm.
That's what causes these huge swings. And it's crazy because you even think like 15th, that's decent. I'm keeping it between the buoys. But with how deep these condensed fields are, specifically in Europe, when you only have one semifinal and how strong their athlete field is, that's what I think. That's where I think this adjusted format is a home run, right? Because now you have half the competition on a single day. One slip up early in the first or second workout, and suddenly you're having to rebound in a very big way to execute under high intensity, like I said, with that short workout. Like that's what just good sports are. Like
Yeah.
those are the good sports moments, right? Like um, whether you come back from the misstep or not is the story that people talk about, the triumph or the tragedy. And it, I loved it. It was awesome seeing everybody just rip it at the end. There's a few athletes that I think really deserve some credit for how they performed on the final day, but it was like almost no one was immune to at least you know losing 20 to 30 points on the final day in some fashion to somebody that was involved in the race.
Well, Victor Hoffer had his three best finishes of the competition on the final day. And to me, as impressive as that performance and that win in event four was, event five, he takes 10th. Like you want to talk about the pressure being on there. You just got done with an event that was tailor made for you. And now you get out there with the heavy barbells. You're not supposed to, this is supposed to be a damage event or damage control event for you. And he took 10th there. Like that was big. And then able to, in the final event, do what he needed to do to stay ahead of Moritz Fiebig,
Yeah.
and got some help in the final heat to really solidify that spot. Moves all the way up to six.
Well,
What about Bjorgvin Carl Gudmundsson, seventh place? That's almost in Bjorgvin, which is sixth officially. Number six is just being replaced by Bjorgvin's face from now on. This is Bjorgvin. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Bjorgvin, 7, 8, 9,
oh
10. So
that's
we're all clear on that. But just doing what he does, hanging out, blammo, going to
and
the
here's
games again.
and here's what's crazy, like you whether it's at the games or these semifinals, he's we always talk about like how consistent he is at fitting just outside the frame of what catches your eye,
Mhm.
right? We joke that he's the head of the League of Shadows in CrossFit. He didn't have the best weekend, but nothing was like really terrible, right? Like 16th, 16th, 13th, 11th, 16th, 6th. So pretty much outside of the 6th, everything was in 4 to 5 placings of each other.
Yep.
And amidst the roller coaster ride from other people, that was enough. A solid 6 was there. I mean, he mentioned, if you haven't already, he talks to Lauren on Sunday, just talking about how like he was starting to finally actually feel normal on the last day in terms of like feeling like himself. But I also think that like he's one of the few athletes that like 3 events in a day going into a Sunday when you have to perform. He's been in this race time
Mhm.
and time again, whether it's at the games, whether it was a few years back. I think it was 2018 when he had to come back after being outside of a qualifying spot after day one, when he didn't have the best regionals Linda event. And that was the year Roman won. It's, it's funny to say, but like this is what Bjorgvin needed as far as like just get to the games. And then he knows how to prep for the games and get that run up and make the most of his time there and execute at the games as good as anyone.
Yeah. let's look at the rest of the qualifiers here. Harry Lightfoot, congratulations to you. Callum Clements in ninth. He's going. Moritz Fiebig by 1 point over Uldis Upniks. Now remember, if Europe doesn't lose a spot, Upniks is in and Vunyak is the last man out. Luka Vunyak was only 4 points out. Jonakowski made a run, just didn't do enough. He was 30 points out at the end of the day. But final question, and we'll dive into all these guys a lot more when we recap this semifinal. Some other questions that we have and we can talk about later in the week. Lazar Jukic, is he now the king in Europe?
Uh yeah, I think so. I mean, I think he could have made that claim last year or the year before. Him not just consistently winning, but being the highest finishing European athlete at the games in multiple iterations of the sport with the seasons changing every year. But you know, he's no finish lower than eighth. Nothing really like wow. He didn't have that like sizzling event win that like anchors your mind of like, oh yeah, he dominated this weekend, but he really was by far and away like the class
Mhm.
of this event. And it wasn't always necessarily just like blowing people away. It was doing damage control and managing the events where, a few years ago, that snatch event, a few years ago, even the heavy front squats with the toes to bar might have given him some trouble. Some of the heavy below parallel stuff, some of the heavier barbell loading might not have been great, but he's still tremendous upper body pulling. He managed to work on his weaknesses to a capacity where this is almost, I'll say this, it's almost prime BKG esque, right? Where he was consistently hitting the fifth, sixth, seventh, and then winding up towards the top.
Mhm.
And I, yeah, I mean, we didn't talk about him a ton coming into the weekend because I think some of the bigger storylines were like, who are the other people that are going to come up and maybe break the mold of what they have been doing? Because Lazar, quite honestly, to give him his credit, has been doing stuff like this for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Um, but just like impressive consistency. Like I think you can look at how different the first 2 days were to the third day in terms of results. Look no further than both Uldis and Luka Vunyak, the two leaders after two events, not qualifying.
Yeah.
They went first, and then third and second, not even making the games. And Lazar being the guy that was just behind them. I think he was in third or fourth. And he's the only guy that had everything in the top 10. And he deserves credit for that consistency. Yeah, I'm interested to see what adjustments he makes coming into the games now, because I
Yeah.
think the question is, all right, how does he push up into that? I think, I believe his best finish was fifth, but how does he push himself into the podium spot right now? Because he's at the forefront of a very talented and deep Europe field. And I think what that region really needs again is, outside of, I guess you consider Roman, who's competing, but he's, based out of
Right.
from Russia, living in the United States. They need someone that's like based in Europe out there, adding some hardware for sure on top of what BKG has already done.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the women's side.
Can I say one
Let's do-
thing?
Sure.
I will say a couple athletes. I just want to give some credit to Callum Clements.
Hmm.
You could argue that he had the best day three of any athlete on the men's side. Seventh, fifth, third, rebounding from a 32nd in the opening event, 17th, 19th. So he was kind of middling. Um, he was one of the athletes that I think maybe just fit right outside of that initial push to get back up into the top. I mean, he was lower than Victor Hoffer was. So Victor Hoffer was 18th, and he was 43 points back of Michael Smith in 10th, who was sitting on the bubble. Colin Clements was below that. So he was outside of that realm of like, what do we think can potentially push back? He comes back in a massive way, probably one of the biggest comebacks we'll see, hopefully in these semifinal weekends. And he deserves a ton of credit for sneaking in ninth.
Yeah. Huge performance from him. Things more or less as expected on the women's side. Laura Horvath by 30 points over Gabby McGowan. Horvath with 2 wins and 2 second place finishes. Her lowest finish was 7th in the opening event. That'll do. Gabby McGowan had a great competition. Everything inside the top 10, most everything inside the top 7. Emma Tall, fantastic performance on day number 3 for her. Karin Frayova's in, and Tommy, a woman that you said had a chance to make it. I think a lot of people figured that this was going to be her year. Amy Kringle taking 5th, and like Victor Hoffer, that event 5, the heavy snatches, was one where people thinking, all right, damage control, 13th.
Yeah, and when 13th is your worst event finish,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a recipe to go to the games in a deep field. It I was also impressed with how she came out and attacked in that final event too. She was one of the first athletes off the muscle ups, and I think the lunging was going to be difficult for her. I think heavy below parallel, as you mentioned, coupled with the snatching, is not her best.
Mm-hmm.
So she does good damage control. I don't remember if she missed one of her 2 final lifts. I remember when they're cutting back and seeing the completed lifts. But then to come back and it's like, all right, you did your damage control event. How do you respond when now you're kind of back in the driver's seat? And she absolutely smoked those 15 muscle ups and was pushing Emma Tall until they got to the lunging. And to me, that's like, all right, your mindset has changed now.
Mm-hmm.
You're not hoping to make the games. You're in the driver's seat. I'm going to the games and I'm going to start to dictate my outcomes rather than just see what comes and how I perform. So kudos to her for that. And right behind it, there's that 5, 6, 7 grouping of all rookies: Amy, Claudia, and Linda Kiesman. Consistency across the board. I don't think any of them won an event, but we didn't see any of those like 20th place finishes that we saw from some of the other athletes on the bubble that kept them out of contention. So exciting because for Claudia, she had some of that hometown spirit. Like you could hear the crowd cheering her on, especially in that final day. And yeah, it's cool to see some of these new batches of rookies that we talked about. It was one of
Yeah.
the storylines coming in. It's like there's this group of people that can start to shift the balance of power. Maybe not this year, but start by qualifying and getting themselves to the games, and we'll see that slow transition from the old greats of the European region.
Now you got Elisa Fuliano making it back. She had a really great performance in event 5.
Event record.
Yeah, event record, and Laura Horvath couldn't catch her either. But yeah, had the event record, and Lucy McGonigal had it before that.
Mm-hmm.
That was impressive. Although Lucy obviously doesn't qualify, but she will be at individual at the games. It's a matter of when, not if, for her. And then you have Emma McQuaid, who, and I mean this with in the best way possible. She is a cockroach. You cannot kill her.
Yeah.
Like she just whatever you throw at her, it's not, stomach bug, fine. Injury, whatever, good. Whatever it is, she's gonna fight through it. Like her her mental toughness reminds me a lot of Margot Alvarez. Just doesn't get phased by anything.
Yeah. And I mean, what this has been, I would say, a hallmark of her career, particularly, and it makes sense, right? Then she was great friends and would train with Sam Briggs,
Mm-hmm.
and,
There you
and
go.
in that way, they're like, man, these two are hard to kill. But it's crazy how that shift has happened for her over her career. Because if anyone remembers back 10-ish years ago, um, 2014, 2015, the question was like, even 2016, 2017, like, will she ever get over the hump and get to the games, right? She would
Mm-hmm.
do well in the open. She'd always do well in that online format. She would crush some of these open workouts and finish really high. I want to say she was from 2016 to 2019. She finished no lower than 19th, I think. So she's always on that like top page of the leaderboard. It's like, how is she eventually going to get to the games? And then suddenly she breaks through. She rips off games qualifications in 2019, 2020, 21, 22, and just starts building that consistency at an age where she's now 34, where it's almost like she found this second wind and like this, I don't know, what's like this renaissance, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
at the obviously having the injury and the shoulder stuff that you had to work through is a big setback, especially for any time when you talk about that for an athlete that's over 30 in this sport where like volume and intensity are so important. And she just stuck with it this time. She was solid if on the snatching event, which is not one of her events. That's not a strength for her. And then she turns around and has another solid performance on the last event when your back's against the wall.
Mm-hmm.
It's the The resiliency to go from increasingly better performances, 21st, 14th, 8th, and kind of find your stride as the pressure starts to mount. Um, to me, I'm just stoked for her.
Yeah.
She's an awesome athlete. She's one of the people that out on the sanctions trail or travel trail when we're covering these events. She's always been amazing, and it's cool to see her kind of fight and grip back at the same way that she's always kind of bounced back in the early years.
A couple just crazy things that I wanted to talk about that I noticed is like, that people are talking about too. I think it's the first time that both open winners didn't qualify for the games.
Oh,
We've had
yeah.
that in the past. Jamie Green, I think it was 2016,
She went team that
but she
year.
went team. So she
Yeah.
still I was at the games, but didn't qualify as an individual. But I
Mhm.
think this is the first time that has ever happened. Also, I can't remember. I mean, maybe 2007, the last time we didn't have an Icelandic woman in the field.
Yeah. Let's see. Annie made her debut in 2009. From
So
there on out,
2008, right? Maybe 2008 is the
uh,
last time.
Annie was 2009. So it's
Okay,
been since 2008 since we
right.
didn't have an Icelandic in the field. I want to say, let me see. Let me find it. I have it
Comforting information.
because back in like 2008, um, there were some people over in Iceland that were,
Mhm.
I want to say Jenny Magnuson. There was Svein Bjornson. Oh, sorry, that's a name that always gets me. Yeah, I don't.
But no Annie, no Katrin, no
Yeah.
Turi, no Sarah. Like that is
So this is how I would put this. This is the first time ever in the history of CrossFit Games qualifying that we haven't had an Icelandic woman at the CrossFit
mhm,
Games. Because in 2008, you didn't need to qualify; you could sign up. 2009 was the first year that you had to qualify for the games through that regional system there. And there's ever since there's always been an Icelandic woman at the games.
yeah. Uh, before we put some finishing touches on this entire weekend, let's just really fast recap what happened in Asia because there were some actually really good matchups there. And we'll start on the men's side. Well, two men are going. Ivan Kukurtsev, who had a great competition, 2 event wins, nothing lower than seventh. And Arthur Semenov, who I don't think was in a qualifying spot until the final event. He needed to finish, he finished fourth in that event number 6 and got some help in the process. Ilyas Kuliev, the man who finished third, really struggled with the walking lunges and then dropped down to 11th. And that allowed Semenov to get in. So Kukurtsev and Semenov are going for the men. And then on the women's side, same deal. We had a spot change hands in the final event. Duong Jung needed to make up 6 points on Anna Ivanova in the final event, and Duong Jung does that. So two women from South Korea go into the CrossFit Games as they get 3 spots. The women do. Sayur Kaya wins the whole thing. She had make that 4 event wins in 6 events. I think that's 8 event wins in the last 2 years at semifinals for her. Sung Young Choi, she had 2 event wins, and then Dewan Jung had that 17th place finish in event 3, but again, came through when it counted in event number 6. Took 4th place, got the help she needed, so she is heading back to the CrossFit Games. So congratulations to those athletes as well. Uh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Say a couple things that kind of stood out after watching all the events. One of the things that I love about regional semifinals, like this stage of qualifying when we get in person, particularly when we have a retread on an event, is to see where the field has progressed. Right, we saw 2 event records, I believe, for both men and women out of Europe on that event 5, which was the snatching event. Um, but I also think it added a little bit of credence to just how good some of the top athletes have been for quite some time. Matt Fraser would have finished 4th with his time in 2016 at Europe
Wow.
this year. Uh, um, I believe Katrin David's daughter would have finished 5th. And even though Katrin wasn't the record, she was a second off. Both Matt and Katrin went in week number 1. So they had the similar turnaround time in terms of like, hey, here are the workouts. You don't have much time to practice and nail down strategy. How can you do it quickly? And that's where this Europe field kind of stacks up at going in week 1, similar to East used to go back in the day. And to me, that's crazy, right? Like that proves like how good the greats really are. but also even in that system now, we have some new names coming in. Like obviously Braun and the barbell is great, but Lisa Fuliano being able to set the record and do so with intention. Honestly, it was I didn't necessarily expect her to be the person to win that event.
Me
So,
neither.
especially ahead of like, I feel like we should. And this is sorry, this was just an aside. You know how Tiger Woods has like Sunday Tiger?
Hmm.
I think we need to start having like Sunday Laura because
Oh yeah.
she's just a different animal on the final day of
Hmm.
competition. And I use the term animal in the best way possible, obviously, but the first second to close out and jump into the lead. I think she was in a tie for lead going in the fifth event, takes over the lead, and then runs away with it a little bit. This is just kind of becomes the mo. Like, do not worry about Laura until we start to get in the back half of Saturday because
Yeah.
it's like she's like starts to get warmed up. She's almost like Rocky. Like we got to get a couple of rounds in. We got to like throw some haymakers and let's get going.
And keep in mind, last year she won the games after finishing third at her semifinal. She wins this year by 30 points. So making a little bit of a statement is Laura
Yeah,
Hartman. But
it's the reason why she's a champ.
you touched on this a little bit, but just to close things out here, one of the overarching themes that we talked about coming in, one of the storylines, changing of the guard, sort of a shifting of the landscape in Europe. There have been times where maybe some, obviously every year newcomers trickle in. You get some rookies that happens every year. But this year feels a little different. It does feel like now things have indeed shifted, and I think it's for two reasons. First, the names that made it in, but also the names that didn't, and the names that kind of needed to fight to get in, like Bjorn Carl Gudmundsson. That was not a sure thing for him, which usually it has been in the past.
Yeah, I mean, you look at. I'm trying to find it. 1, 2, 3. Outside of BKG, there's not a single athlete in Europe that qualified prior to 2019.
Wow.
That's every Laura qualified in 2018. She's the only athlete on the women's side. So you have one male athlete and one female athlete that qualified in 2018 or before. Everyone else is in this new system. Basically, everyone else never qualified during regionals,
Mhm.
qualified either during the sanctionals era or in this new semifinals era. So if you want to look at like what encapsulates this shift, that's certainly it.
Yeah. All right. Week number 1 of semifinals is in the books. I had a blast watching it. And again, I got to give a shout out to the people who put on the Far East Throwdown stream.
Yeah.
I was up late, up early watching that, and it was great. I really was entertained by it. I learned a lot about some of the athletes there without having the benefit of commentary, and I think that's a credit to whoever was directing that, producing it. They did a really good job visually telling the story. So credit to them. Also got to give a shout out to the crew over in Europe. Chase Ingram, uh,
Lucy
Luke
Campbell was
Campbell,
great.
Lauren Smith. They were all fantastic. Had a blast listening to them. And they did not, Chase did not have an easy time.
Yeah,
Like in that last event, it's like, here are all the scenarios, communicate that clearly. And I thought he did a fantastic job. So
totally. I will say, like, I love. It's always great, right? When like an athlete like Lucy comes into the booth and you
yeah.
gets to share the athlete perspective, and then you still see because she's very much still very fit, and I don't know where she's at currently with like her wrist and everything, but I hope to be able to see her maybe compete in the future. But you can still see the ties that she has to some of the athletes. And it was like event 5, Connie
Mhm.
Easby had to hit a snatch at the end, and it was like a fight on that last rep. And you could hear her like almost like, it happens to everybody, right?
Yeah.
You maybe forget to you hit your mute, and you're like, oh yeah, and you could hear her like almost like quietly cheering for
Yeah.
her mate from the UK. So which was cool.
It was a lot of fun. If you guys missed anything, you want the Cliffs Notes version of any of the individual events, head to our Instagram account. We have highlights of every single individual event up there so you can get caught up on what you missed.
Mhm.
Lauren gave a ton of content to us as well. She was on the ground, said the atmosphere there was fantastic. She has
Oh
a ton
yeah.
of interviews going up still on our Instagram page. So whatever you missed, go to our Instagram page, check it all out. It's all there for you.
And we'll have
Next
the
week, we got,
I
you
want to
have
say we
what?
have the little recaps on
Yeah.
YouTube too. If you
Yep.
want like a 3 to 4 minute recap of just the what you need to know,
Yep.
that's also there too.
That'll be coming up as well. Next week, what? We got the West. We
Oceania.
have Oceania and South. Isn't there,
I
aren't
think
there 3 next week? Or
I think
just
there's
2?
3 on the final week, I believe.
I go week by week, as you can tell.
I have to.
I
It's
I can't, yeah. All right, we got, let's see, next we got Oceania. We got North America West. Yes, there are only two. And then we're going to close it out the following week with Africa, South America, and North America East. That's where I'm going to be, North America East. Looking forward to that at the Syndicate Crown. But next week's going to be a blast. This is what I love about Oceania weekend and it being on the West Coast. You're going to get like round the clock coverage for 4 days. And remember, Oceania, they're streaming all 3 days. So you can, if you're out here in the, in the old good US of A, things start Thursday afternoon, goes through the night. You get up like in early morning, you get up, you get ready for maybe a little bit of a break to eat breakfast. Coverage starts to the West. West finishes up. Here comes Oceania again. So you can have just a round the clock fun time.
I want to say like 72 straight hours of nonstop competition, maybe with a small gap, but
there'll be a little break here. There'll be some breaks here and there, but that's what I love about it, man. Plenty of stuff to watch. Jeremy Austin's going to be on the call down in Oceania. He's always a fun listen. And then Lauren Khalil is going to be calling.
Yeah.
West. Tommy's going to be there on site as well. I'm just going to be here holding down the fort, cheering everybody on. So it's going to be a blast.
This was Oceania week was always one of my favorites because back in the day we would have to have a few employees flip their clocks and stay up all night to help archive, run YouTube, do a bunch of stuff like that. And so it was okay. First weekend's done. Deep breath. On Tuesday evening, you would start to see a few people missing from the office, and then right as we're
start shifting the schedule.
Yep. Kevin Daigle always right as we're starting to like go to the gym, like at the end of the day, he'd be like coming in and like making coffee and like getting ready to it's almost like the March of the Penguins, you know, like it's like an annual migration over to the dark side for a couple days.
Listen, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for listening. Please go and check out Northern Spirit, northernspirit-sport.com. Again, they stepped up big time to help support the semifinals. So the least you can do is just go look at their website. They got fantastic stuff. They sent me, like I said, a t-shirt, some shorts. They're awesome. So drop a few bucks, get some good stuff, help out a company that's really helping out the sport. So northernspirit-sport.com. Congratulations to everybody who competed this weekend. Congratulations to all the athletes who are now moving on to Fort Worth, Texas, and the 2024 CrossFit Games. That is going to do it for us. We will have full coverage next week as we take a look back on this first weekend. Also start to look ahead to weekend number 2. Lauren will be talking about it on Death By. We'll be talking about it on our show. And this is the best part, man. This is the best part of the year. Love it. 1 weekend down, 2 to go. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out. For Tommy Marquez, I'm Sean Woodland. Take care of each other. Be better. We will talk to you guys next time.